This is Come and See with Father Philip Hall, turning to and following Christ in the 21st century. Father Philip is parish priest at All Saints of Lincolnshire Orthodox Church in Lincoln, England.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Begin by reading Matthew chapter 25, verses 31 to 46. Very frequently, the Lord will make use of parables and stories, but in this particular one, it's slightly different, because he's telling about our future. He's talking about the day when we will stand in judgment before God on his magnificent throne, and that God is Jesus Christ himself. And we will be divided into two groups. He calls them the sheep and the goats, and we want to be, on this occasion, on the side of the sheep. He says to them, he's congratulating them, "When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was thirsty, you gave me water. When I was a stranger, you took me in. When I was naked, when I was sick, when I was in prison," and so on. They were fed, given water, they were given somewhere to live, they were dressed, they were visited when they were sick or in prison. The others did none of those things, and both lots are shocked, because neither of them remember any occasion when they either fed or gave water to, or took in, or dressed, or visited, or did anything else for the Lord. But the Lord says, when you did it to one of the least of my brethren, you did it for me. Now you might think, well, in our society, they're not very hungry people or thirsty or strangers or naked or sick or in prison, but there are. There are plenty of all of those, both physically and also spiritually. You only need to go down any high street in this country to find people who are hungry and thirsty, who are homeless, who have poor quality clothing, who are ill, they might be drug abusers or all sorts of other things, and those who are imprisoned within themselves. Let's just take that latter one just for a moment. Believe it or not, there's now a loneliness agenda in Britain. Can you imagine the sort of society where apparently up to 20% of the older population feel that they are usually lonely? What a horrible thought. And in case you're wondering whether this has nothing to do with us, well, in Lincoln, which is where the church is, parts of Lincoln, in fact, a part of Lincoln only about a quarter of a mile away from the church, is in the top 2% of lonely places in Britain. Isn't that a shocking thing to discover? That in our own society, just round the corner, there are people who feel that they are usually desperately lonely. Those people are those who are, as it were, imprisoned in their own homes. But there are plenty of others. Those who are physically hungry, and that's why we have a food bank. Those who are thirsty for knowledge, who have poor quality education, who know nothing about God. Those who are hungry for God. People who are strangers. We know from our own society, our own church, we have lots of people coming here from all over the world. And how lonely are they? How they need to be taken in and looked after and cared for until they find their feet. Those people who are naked, that's why it is that we have a clothing bank within the church. People who actually need to have warm clothes at this cold time of the year. And if you can listen into the background here, you can hear it's pouring with rain and blowing a huge wind. Those who are sick, and I venture to say that most of our society is now sick. Go and sit anywhere. I was sitting in a restaurant not long ago. There was a family nearby. Not one of them looked up at any point from their mobile phones throughout the entire meal. If that isn't sick, I don't know what is. And we've already talked about loneliness. Now, one of the things that you notice about the sheep and the goats is that they didn't know that they were serving the Lord. Out of their hearts poured love, or out of their hearts poured nothing. And those people who were the sheep, out of their hearts poured love. They had received so much from the Lord himself. Their hearts were full of love to bursting point. And at the point of bursting, it flowed out from them to the hungry, the thirsty, the strangers, the naked, the sick, and those in prison. And they would have been surprised, and were surprised, and will be surprised to hear they're doing anything for God at all. But they are. So this begins with God. It begins with him. As you focus your attention on him, and your heart becomes greater, swelled up with love, so it will burst and feed the hungry, give drinks to the thirsty, take in the stranger, clothe the naked, and visit those who are sick or in prison. We're coming to a time of serious fasting. Your fasting needs to be of the sort that does those things. If you're fasting so that you can puff yourself up with pride about how good you are at fasting, or if your fasting is the sort where, like the first time I fasted, I put on weight, or if your fasting is the sort where you're actually saving money for some future event, or if your fasting is about self-beautification, then it's not fasting at all. Your fasting needs to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and visit the sick, and all those other things. And then the Lord will say to you, come and join me. Otherwise he'll say, go that way. There's a furnace prepared for you. Your prayers. God bless you. Amen.
Join us again next time for Come and See with Father Philip Hall, a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.